I will be analyzing this letter from Sergeant Richard Hayashi to Miss Evelyn Corrie, written in 1943. One of the first things that I looked at was the return address of the letter. Upon further research, I discovered that USAFISPA stands for United States Army Forces in the South Pacific Area. Even before the U.S. officially engaged in World War II, this was an important sect of the U.S. military at the time because of Japanese involvement in the war. I also discovered that the base in San Francisco at which Hayashi was stationed was the port of embarkation responsible for providing USAFISPA troops with supplies. The specifics of the supplies remain unknown to me, meaning the supplies could have been food and water or could have been weapons. The next thing that I looked at was the letter's recipient. As it turns out, Miss Evelyn Corrie is a well-known figure in Iowa. She is now known as Mrs. Evelyn Birkby. I discovered that Evelyn was born in 1919, meaning this letter was sent to her when she was 24 years old. She taught third grade as the Director of Religious Education in Waterloo, Iowa for some time. After that, she went to Illinois, where she studied psychology at the University of Chicago and served as the youth director at the First United Methodist Church. She then moved back to Iowa, where she married Robert Birkby in 1946. For nearly 60 years, she has written a weekly cooking column for the Shenandoah newspaper, and for over 40 years she has been on radio sharing stories about life on the farm. At the beginning of the letter, Hayashi asks Evelyn about her trip to Chicago. Since we know that Evelyn eventually went to Chicago for school, I've concluded that this must have been one of Evelyn's first trips to the city, either for a college visit or a meeting with the head administrator at the church. Hayashi was using both commonplace and disinterest in order to get an answer from Evelyn. He probably wanted to know if she plans to move to Chicago or not. By mentioning his brief visit to the city, he created a commonplace for him and Evelyn. Having no personal attachment to the city, and appearing not to have an opinion on whether or not Evelyn would move to Chicago, Hayashi expresses disinterest, making Evelyn more likely to reply openly and honestly. The next paragraph is when Hayashi talks about his life in California at the military base. He primarily talks about the beach in San Francisco. I have two theories about Hayashi's rhetorical goals here, assuming that he wasn't just creating small talk. My first theory is that Hayashi was using the beach as a way to entice Evelyn to visit him at the army base. However, this seems unlikely. My second theory is that Hayashi was using the beach as a distraction from the war, for both Evelyn and himself. Given that the U.S. was in the middle of World War II, the war was undoubtedly an unending and universal topic of conversation. This distraction is a rhetorical technique simply called comfort. By focusing on the beach rather than the military base, Hayashi successfully eases the tension associated with the war. One thing that caught my eye was Richard's use of the word catch. I've ultimately concluded that he meant it in terms of, what's the catch, assuming that there must be a trade-off to the nice weather in San Francisco. A rhetorical question which he answers with, I guess not. And then he signs his name as Dick, rather than Richard, indicating a close friendship with Evelyn.